Good Tuesday afternoon to you. It's 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're having a good afternoon. The state budget is passed, so the Browns get the $600 million they were looking for the domed stadium in Brook Park. Browns owner Jimmy Haslam talked about that Browns domed stadium in Brook Park and his thoughts as it relates to the Browns' home field advantage.
We have not done the job on the field we should, and we bear full responsibility. And if anybody deserves a great stadium and a great team, it's the Cleveland Browns fans. You deal with them every day. We have the world's greatest fans. We are going to deliver a world-class stadium. I could argue it's the best stadium in the country, one of the best in the world. We need to develop the same kind of team. I do think a dome stadium, and you're with us when we go on the road, does give you an advantage with the home field because that noise is just packed in there tighter. And we hope this will become not only a great experience for our fans, but a terrible experience for the visiting team because it is a, quote, hard place to play.
We will talk plenty about the Browns' new stadium with Rich Exner, who is the regional development reporter for cleveland.com and the Plain Dealer. He has been covering this since the beginning. He'll join us in just a few minutes. Adam Schefter, ESPN's NFL insider, with who he thinks will win the Browns' quarterback job.
Your belief at this moment is that Joe Flacco is the week one starting quarterback?
That's where I would guess right now. Now, again, I go back to the summer that Dak Prescott did win the Cowboys starting job. Came into camp and lit it up in the preseason. I go back to the summer that Russell Wilson was drafted in the third round of the 2012 draft, I believe.
Matt Flynn, right?
Matt Flynn they signed, and Russell came in and lit it up. Now, if Dylan Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders can come in and play at that level, which very, very few rookies have done, then sure, the starting job could be within their grasp. But that's the type of performance it would take. A slam dunk, no doubt, have to start this rookie quarterback type of performance in the preseason that separates them from Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett. And I can't imagine that that's going to happen, but you have to see how camp unfolds.
Yep, I think Adam Schefter nailed it. We'll see. Training camp starts in a couple weeks for the rookies. Matt Miller, another ESPN draft analyst, on how Drew Aller, local kid from Medina High School, can become the top quarterback in next year's draft class.
You want some excitement from his game. I think that's what's holding him back from even guys like Nussmeier at LSU or Cade Klubnik at Clemson is when you watch Aller, it's one of those situations of like, you just want to see more. You know, you want to see him take some chances aggressively down the field. I think we saw more of that last year. I would love to see him use his legs a little bit more on, and some of this is out of his control, his legs a little bit more on designed runs, scramble drill opportunities. I mean, he had some rushing production last year. We'd like to see that continue. So, you know, I think just going back to that jump from 23 to 24, let's just see that. But I would like to see him play faster and be a little bit more aggressive down the field as he's doing that.
Fred Greetham from the Orange and Brown Report, Chris Easterling, Browns beat reporter from the Journal, will be along a little bit later in the show to talk plenty of Browns. Guardians, it has been a struggle as of late. They start a 3-game series with the Cubs in Chicago. Matthew Boyd, who was here last year, will be the starter for the Cubs, facing Gavin Williams. Guardians reporter Andre Knott with what he has seen from the Guardians as of late.
They're going through an identity crisis, if you ask me, Kev. And I understand the venom that some have, because there's venom within the organization. This ain't a fun time. You were so close to the World Series, and I think getting so close to the World Series, it's like a drug. You want that back, and to get back there, you forget how hard it is to get there, and how it's not just one season that gets you to where you're at. It's a culmination of years of doing things, with the right people the right way. The pitching is back to being the pitching. I think in the month of June, I've already had some notes that I put out. They had the 4th best ERA in the American League, 6th best ERA in all of Major League Baseball. You can't have that good of pitching and win as many games as they won. This past month of June, it was bad. It was horrible. I remember saying on this show, and I remember saying, in different shows, we saw some of the moves that came in the offseason coming, Kev. But when you combine, and I don't have the numbers exactly in front of me, but I got a pretty good idea. But when you let 160 RBIs go, You let 160 RBIs go, and that's killing them right now.
He's referring to Josh Naylor and Andres Jimenez. The number that sticks out to me is in the last 36 innings, they've scored in 1 inning. All 6 runs in 1 inning. The last 4 games, they've been shut out 3 of the last 4. Again, they're in Wrigley against the Cubs. Cubs are playing well. Let's turn our attention to the Cavs. National NBA analyst Brian Windhorst with his thoughts on why the Cavs did not re-sign Ty Jerome but did re-sign Sam Merrill.
I don't think they chose Sam Merrill over Ty Jerome. I think they chose Lonzo Ball over Ty Jerome. The Cavs looked at what happened to them in the playoffs and saw that one of their big problems was perimeter defense. And while Ty was awesome this year, in the playoffs against Indiana, when they went down, he could not get a stop. They attacked him every single time. And so Lonzo Ball, if he's healthy, and of course it's an if he's healthy, he will give them a better opportunity defensively. And so the choice that they made was to retain the perimeter defense and the shooting and give up some of the playmaking. Lonzo Ball is not a dynamic offensive creator like Ty Jerome is. Lonzo Ball will not get into the paint and distribute the way Ty did. He is not going to be that sort of triple threat that we saw. And he's probably not going to be the three-point shooter that he was, because even though he's improved as a three-point shooter, Jerome was awesome as a three-point shooter this year. They are going to absolutely be giving stuff up on that part of the ball, but they are going to get a player that, if he's healthy, is a significantly better defender, better size, better positionality, flexibility, better defense, unquestionably.
It'll be interesting to see if Lonzo Ball can stay healthy. If he can, he could do what they need him to do. All right, a name that has been kind of linked to the Cavs, Al Horford. We've had a couple of voicemails about it. He's received interest from several contending teams since the start of free agency, including the Celtics, who he played for last couple of seasons, Golden State Warriors, New York Knicks, Denver Nuggets, Cavs, and Lakers all have contacted Al Horford. We'll see who he chooses to sign with. We're going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Brown Stadium talk is up first. Rich Exner, who's the regional development reporter, who's been covering this Brown Stadium since its beginning. He's up first from cleveland.com and the Plain Dealer. Stay with us.
You got so much to do. It's got you feeling blue. Put a little play in your day. 'Cause it's fun all over the state. So come on. Great games wait for you and me. The Ohio Lottery. Put a little play in your day. Put a little play in your day.
We begin by talking Browns domed stadium in Brook Park. Last night, the governor, Mike DeWine, signed the budget that included the $600 million allocated from the state to the Haslam Group so they can build that domed stadium in Brook Park. Jimmy Haslam, owner of the Browns, talked about why this project is so important.
Building this dome facility, we'll go from having 10 events a year in our current stadium to having all kinds of events. And I think it's really important for everybody to understand that, yes, there'll be 10 NFL games and hopefully more, but there'll also be a chance to have national championship games in football, Final Four games in basketball, men's and women's. There'll be a chance to have the Sweet 16 here. The Women's World Cup has come to the U.S. in 31. We will put in a bid for that. Would we have gotten a bid in? If we'd had it, we'd have had a bid for the Men's World Cup, which comes next year, as you know. So you have to think big and broad. All the concerts that we've missed that go to Detroit or go somewhere else, Indianapolis, will now come here. So it is going to be transformational.
With that, let's welcome in Rich Exner. He is a reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, reports on regional development, has followed this from the beginning. Rich, what about it? Is that realistic that this can be that type of venue that draws those type of events?
I guess I don't see why not. I've been to the Big Ten championship game in Indianapolis, and certainly they got that infrastructure down there, and they've had a reputation for years. But I guess the question would be, why not Cleveland if some of those things can go to Indianapolis and Detroit or other cities like that? The big one people talk about, of course, is the Super Bowl. And I thought it was interesting when I had a brief chance to talk to Roger Goodell, commissioner of the NFL, on the phone here a few weeks ago. I tossed that question out there, and he was quick to answer, but not really answer. Yes, the facility would be enough for a Super Bowl, but we look at lots of things like hotel rooms and infrastructure. So he was pretty non-committal on that big one that everybody talks about, the Super Bowl. But I think on a lot of these other events, why not Cleveland if it's happened in other markets that are similar size?
And you know, the Greater Cleveland Sports Commission does a great job. So you know, give them something else to kind of show off the region with, if you will.
Right, right. I mean, how many times have we had the NCAA basketball tournament downtown? But I think pretty much the reason we probably haven't seen regional finals here is they tend to go to these bigger facilities. I assume that I just saw your clip there from Jimmy Haslam talking with Great Ambition about some of these things. But those things go into markets these size. They don't have to go into markets so huge like a Dallas or an LA. So why wouldn't Cleveland be a player if they have the facility for it? The difference is, of course, there's a lot of comparisons drawn to Detroit, Minneapolis, and Indianapolis, and those are all downtown facilities. And that's just the one negative people are throwing out about this. This is sitting out by an airport next to a Ford company, or Ford plant that's still operating, not downtown where you have all these other hotels and everything to create that vibe and maybe convenience for the people going there.
So is this a done deal? You followed it from the beginning. Is it done?
I've kind of thought this was essentially a done deal since back in February when Governor DeWine put his funding plan into the budget. It ultimately wasn't used. He wanted to double the sports tax. But to me, that was the acknowledgement that the state's willing to kick in money. We could debate forever whether the state should kick in money on something like this, but the bottom line is they have. Jimmy Haslam and his team has convinced them it's worthwhile, so it's there. And now let's talk about, is it a done deal? Well, Jimmy Haslam says this thing is $2.4 billion. If it costs more, he's claiming he'll cover the cost overruns. He's offering to put up $1.2 billion. He's got $600 million now from the state. That's $1.8 billion. Leaves him $600 million. Brook Park's pretty much been on board all along. Most of the local money would come from emissions taxes, parking taxes, and so forth out of Brook Park. Another way saying from the fans. So he's got this piece. Where does he get the final $600 million from? His priority is to try to convince the county somehow to loan that, to take out bonds for $600 million to be repaid from taxes at the site. Chris Ronayne, the county executive, is dead set against that. And the Browns said 2 months ago, we'll do this with or without the county support. So I guess my question would be on that, why would the county get involved if they don't have to? And the Browns are on record saying they will do it without him. So is it a done deal? We've lived through that fumble with Ernest Biner out there in Denver, so we don't want to call anything a done deal until we see it happen. But it's getting pretty darn close, right?
Absolutely. You mentioned Governor DeWine. So after approving it, DeWine talked about the budget and kind of his thoughts. Why, you mentioned the 600 isn't coming from the way he would have done it, which is an increase in sports wagering. But he talked about the budget.
That was not my first choice. I had another way of doing it. But governors don't get everything they want. Nobody gets everything they want in life. The criteria I set forward was it had to be holistic. Couldn't be just about the Browns. It had to be about all our teams in Ohio and future teams, because we're going to get some women's professional sports, more teams coming in. We just heard about the WNBA team in Cleveland, and this will continue to be, an issue. So my criteria is it had to be holistic, it had to be universal, but it also would not spend money out of the general fund that directly competes with education, directly competes with mental health. Stadiums should not compete with mental health. Stadiums should not compete with education. And so this budget, while it didn't do it the way I originally designed it, does that. And that was those two things were my first priorities.
And again, again, to make it clear, this is not out of the general fund. It's not taking money from education. It's not taking money from health services or those kind of things. Unclaimed funds that was sitting there unused.
That's what they say. Now, of course, the argument against that would be, yes, you could have used these monies for those things too. But there is one little caveat to throw in on this is Mark Dan, who is the former Attorney General of Ohio, says that he's going to bring a lawsuit to contend that this is an illegal use of unclaimed funds. That's your and my money or other people that have money sitting down there we haven't claimed with. I don't know what the chances are of that, but that's the one little caveat on the state money. This money's sitting there. They got, there's $4.8 billion. That's billion with a B sitting in a fund that people haven't claimed, that maybe you didn't turn in a rebate or something, or maybe some bank account was floating around for you. That's sitting there not doing anything right now. So that's the money that they want to tap for this. And I guess the argument, even if people think it's unwise to tap that money for that, there's $4.8 billion into that. They want to set aside a third of that, $1.6 billion, for these purposes. So it's not like it's wiping out that fund. And taxes from the site supposedly will be used to pay it off, and they're making Jimmy Haslam set aside money just in case his projections aren't as optimistic as they would be. So I guess that's a lot of words to say. It's pretty close to a done deal there too, but there is that little tiny caveat out there that people are contesting whether this is legal what the state did.
The average person is wondering, how much money does something like this generate? Give somebody an idea. Say you do get the Big Ten championship, or you get a Sweet 16 or a Final Four. What level of revenue does that generate for a region?
They always like to throw out big figures that I have a hard time getting my hands around and whether to believe them. But let's just say if there is a Big Ten championship game and there's 70,000 seats, to take a round number, and I don't know, let's just say a third of the people come from outside the area. That's 20,000 people that need a hotel room. So 15. Let's say that they eat up 10,000 hotel rooms. If they double up, 10,000 times $200 a night is what? I'm doing the math on the fly here, but that's a couple $1 million if I'm correct on the fly. So it's some serious money. Fills up hotel rooms, fills up bars and restaurants. I saw it when I went to Detroit and Pittsburgh for games, or Detroit and Indianapolis. There's lots of money there. How much is it? I don't know, but I mean, you and I were around this town before there was a gateway where it was at, right?
Yep.
And I can't recall too much business on Huron Road and Prospect Avenue and East 4th Street before those stadiums were built back there. So it certainly means something to an industry that you see the difference if you go down there now and the Guardians are playing versus a day when they're not. There could be filled tables or empty tables.
So the other thing that comes to my mind, and I'm curious as to your opinion with it. Again, Jimmy Haslam's investing $1.2 billion of his own money into this region. I'm not sure anybody else was standing there ready to invest that kind of money into this region. So why wouldn't you work with them? Why would you try to work against? I don't understand that.
That's certainly the argument out there. I mean, comparison, $1.2 billion. I just watched a county commissioner meeting down in Hamilton County where they complained that the Bengals are only putting up $120 million, where Jimmy Haslam on the other side of the state's putting up 1.2. So what gives? Why aren't they getting more money out of the Bengals in Cincinnati? That's a heck of a lot of money. I can't recall another project so large. There's always inflation that makes it a little bit difficult to say over time. But the other thing I hear too is that that Brook Park site should be used for attracting industry. That Brook Park site sat empty since I think it was 2011. I think it's been 14 or I think it's been 14 years since anything's been on that site generating any economic activity whatsoever. So you're talking about Jimmy Haslam putting in $1.2 billion. The state, whether you like it or not, is going to put in $600 million. That's $1.8 billion being offered to the region. I've been in this business for better than 40 years in this town, and I'm not sure I ever heard anything any close to that, even if you did adjust for inflation.
Rich Exner, I appreciate you taking some time with us and talking about the stadium project. Thanks so much, Rich.
Thanks for having me on.
Rich Exner, make sure you check him out. Cleveland.com, does regional development. He will have anything that is happening with this Brown Stadium as they continue to develop it. We're going to take a quick time out. Fred Greetham from the Orange and Brown Report. We're talking Browns. Stay with us.
Come back to Go Forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
Sports4CLE continues. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, Dave, Frank from Cleveland. A couple of quick things for you. I was just wondering, is JOK's contract insured like Deshaun's was? And number two, I'm sort of hoping Haslam steps in and says start Sanders. What do you think? Give me your thoughts, brother. God bless you and the family. I love you, and be safe and be good.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Let's welcome in Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. Fred, I would assume JOK's contract is insured like Watson's was. Have you heard anything relative to that?
They usually don't make it to public knowledge, but big contracts usually are insured. And he would fall into that. He signed a 3-year, $37 million extension just before the year he got hurt last year, which had like $20 million guaranteed. So I can almost assure you that they have insurance on that. But I can't say for sure, but
Yeah.
it's pretty standard practice in the NFL today.
All right, we'll get to Shedeur Sanders here in a minute. Matt Miller, he is a draft analyst for ESPN, talking about Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders, analyzing what they did in college.
I always say that production has to be meaningful production, whether it be a quarterback or a pass rusher or whatever. Stats need context. And so for, Dillon Gabriel, ton of stats over the course of his very long and prolific college career. He's someone, when you add into the context of, okay, we got to look at the scheme he was playing in. We also got to look at something like the size that he doesn't have, the tools that he doesn't bring to the table. Now, that doesn't exclude him from having a chance to become something in the NFL, obviously. Same with Shedeur Sanders, whose stats weren't that prolific. He had good stats the last 2 years at Colorado, not necessarily great stats, but it also goes back to, okay, well, again, not great size, not great arm strength, not great mobility. I think with Drew Aller, or any player, what you want to see size, athletic ability, strength, and production. Because there's going to be times we're going to have guys that are, Mykel Williams and Shamar Stewart last year, these huge guys who had no production. And so it is always, I think, that conversation of, in a perfect world, you get both, but that is hard to find.
Brett, I would be stunned if really until week 6, 7, 8, something like that.
Yeah, obviously injuries are a big game changer, and it always seems to be with the Browns, quarterbacks. But I really don't see the hurry myself either in throwing a rookie out there. If you drafted somebody second overall, sure, there's pressure to start them sooner than later. Even Baker Mayfield was the number 1 pick, and the plan was that year to let him sit and watch. We all know Tyrod Taylor got hurt in the 3rd game, and Baker, he was probably the most ready rookie that the Browns have had. So I really think it's between Pickett and Flacco, and sooner or later you're going to end up, getting a chance to take a look at the quarterbacks. It's really going to come down to, how the season's going and what, the Browns' philosophy going into this season is. Is it to win, which I assume it is, or is it to just develop and look and see what you have with the 2 rookie quarterbacks and even Kenny Pickett?
So when you look at it, the thought process I have with this is Flacco gives you the ability to have big plays, throw the ball down the field like you want to. There's a risk with turnovers. He's turned the ball over, and he did when he was here. Pickett doesn't get you as many big plays, doesn't turn the ball over. Who do you think comes out on top in that?
Again, it goes back, Dave, I think, to, that first 6 weeks is very daunting when you look at the records of those teams that they played in the first 6 weeks. Last year, I know it was last year, but last year they combined for 71 and 31. You have three of the NFC North, and I mean, you're talking about the Lions, the Packers, and the Vikings that all had like, you know, double-digit wins, and you have the worst record of the first 6 games is the Bengals, and they were 9-8. So, if you really are going into the season and you have every expectation that they are, when you have the veterans like Myles Garrett, David Njoku, Denzel Ward that want to win, Joe Bitonio, I think Joe Flacco, gives you the best chance to win. He's been there, done that. You're playing very good defenses. First of all, you put either of the rookies in there, you're kind of throwing them to the wolves, and even Kenny Pickett to some degree, but it really comes down to that. I think it's easier to move on from Joe Flacco than to start a rookie or Pickett and then move on from them in the first couple games. So Flacco's your 40-year-old. If he can steady the wheel and get you through that early part of the season, anything can happen. But if you start 1-5, 2-4, then it's time to turn things over, and see what you have the rest of the way with the other guys.
So I know you wrote an article about tight end analysis. What do you think it's going to take for David Njoku to get back to that Pro Bowl status?
Stay on the field. I mean, he missed 6 games last year. That was really it. And the Browns just really didn't have. They had Jordan Akins. He ended up having 40 catches. Between Akins and Njoku, they had like all but 6 catches from the tight end position. I think that realistically, I think Njoku would probably be your second best weapon behind Jerry Jeudy on offense. And so if he stays on the field, I think he's going to put up big numbers. No reason that he wouldn't, but he had some nagging injuries and just kind of bothered him throughout the season. I think that held him back, but I think more than anything, you got to have the quarterback and get him the ball, the offensive line, good running game, all those type of things, allows you to take the pressure off of 1 or 2 weapons. And I think Harold Fannin could be a big help to Njoku. I think a running game, but more than anything, the quarterback, have solid quarterback play. I mean, Njoku had all his numbers his Pro Bowl year, really a lot of them, when Joe Flacco took over. He really became like him and Amari Cooper really feasted when Flacco was in there. So I think that Flacco would help Njoku. But I think more than anything, if he plays the whole season, even last year, his numbers were pretty good. But when you miss 6 games, you add 6 games production to that, he would have had numbers up there that probably would have put him in the conversation for the Pro Bowl.
Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. Now I'm going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll talk a little bit more about the Browns' wide receiving core and running back. Sports4CLE, I'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
This is from ESPN's This Is Football. Kevin Clark on what he sees for the Browns in 2025.
This all comes down to whether or not Dylan Gabriel plays. Dylan Gabriel is the bad and sad quarterback to me. I'm sorry. This is a great thing to get into because there's ways for them to be bad and not sad.
Mm-hmm.
And there's ways they're not going to be good. I just want to say this. They're not going to be good.
Sure.
8 games is the ceiling. It's the
Yes.
ceiling, the absolute ceiling. If they play Kenny Pickett and the defense is awesome and Myles Garrett, who they brought back, is looking good and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I actually just had, because they threw numbers at the quarterback position, because I'm just intrigued to see Shedeur Sanders just as a viewer. Like, he's an entertainment product, right? I just want to see what that looks like. To me, I'm looking at this saying, I want to watch this team. Like, I view it, not to do league pass rankings and infringe on our friend Zach Lowe,
Yes.
but when we're doing Sunday Ticket in the 1 p.m. window, and if Shedeur's in the mix to play, they're in the mix.
You know, Fred, we heard that kind of thing with Johnny Manziel, and that didn't turn out very well. Here's the thing. If the defense is good and they can run the ball and they don't turn the ball over, those are basic tenets of football in the NFL, they have a chance to be okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's the formula. I mean, as far as we know how bad the offense was last year, primarily because the quarterback play, averaging 15 points a game, isn't going to get it done. But I think the Browns' approach is they felt their best path to be relevant is, as was suggested there, is a strong defense. The defense was very good in 2023. Fell off last year. I think you could argue a lot of it had to do with the offensive problems. As many times as the offense turned the ball over, you kept putting the defense back out on the field and eventually got wore down. But they, as bad as the offense was, they used their first 2 picks in the draft, very high picks, on defensive players. They identified the middle to get stronger, and they went out and got Mason Graham and they got Carson Schwessinger, 2 rookies they expect to start, and Malik Collins right next to Mason Graham. So I believe they feel the defense getting that fixed is the quickest way to be relevant. If that defense can get back in the top 10, they don't have to be number 1, but if they can just get back into the top 10 and be strong and create turnovers, then I think the offense, if it's just acceptable, average, they have a chance to win more games. I mean, last year you win 3 games because you only scored 15 points. So if your defense can hold the opponent under 20, the offense ought to be able to be acceptable. And I think the easiest path is to go back to that wide zone scheme, running the ball. You set yourself up with going and getting 2 running backs with fresh legs in Judkins and Sampson. I think that's going to be your ticket. Good defense and a very strong running game.
I know you wrote an article about the running backs. Take us through that and kind of what your thoughts are.
Well, I mean, it's no secret. They wanted to get younger there, and they went out and got 2 top-tier college, running backs. I mean, Quinshon Judkins is a guy that I wrote about, him and Travion Henderson, both from Ohio State. One of those 2 would look really good in a Browns uniform. Obviously, they got Judkins. They went higher than any running back that Andrew Berry's acquired in his 6 years here. Drafted him in the 2nd round. Previously, the highest asset was Jerome Ford, and he was a 5th round pick. So then they go get Dylan Sampson in the 4th round. So both of the running backs were the higher priority than any running back they had brought in. And so I would have favored still having Nick Chubb, see what he could do. At worst, he's your 3rd running back, but they opted to go with the Jerome Ford. And so that's where it is. But I really think your ticket is Judkins, Sampson, the 1-2 punch. And I think that's really what they want to do, is control the ball running and with your offensive line. 4 of the 5 were brought in this wide zone scheme. They brought back an offensive line coach that was similar to what Bill Callahan ran. And so I think that's what you're going to see. that can shorten the game, ball control, and I don't, what I think Judkins, if he doesn't open the season as the starter, he will take over very shortly after the season starts. But I kind of think he will be the bell cow back. And then Ford and Sampson will battle it out for number 2. I think Sampson will end up before the season is over, for sure being the change of pace, third down back or the second back to Judkins.
So let's combine a couple articles you wrote with the wide receivers. What can Jerry Jeudy do for an encore with his second season with the Browns? And other than Jerry Jeudy, do you think they have enough at wide receiver?
Well, as far as Jeudy, I think basically, can he do it again? I mean, he's going to obviously get a lot of attention. He really came on the scene when Deshaun Watson got hurt. Jeudy hadn't done much, and he really flourished under Jameis Winston. I think he would flourish with Joe Flacco at quarterback, kind of how Amari Cooper did when he was here with Flacco. I think there's going to be pressure on him because 90 catches last year. He's the focal point in the passing game. That's where I think Njoku and Harold Fannin can really help. But I don't know if they did enough at wide receiver. I think the real wild card is Deontay Johnson. They're taking a big risk on a guy who hasn't really done anything in a couple years and was on 3 teams last year. This is kind of his last chance, but other than Jeudy, you don't really have a proven, viable NFL wide receiver. Cedric Tillman showed a great amount of potential in that 3-game stretch. He had 22 catches, 3 touchdowns, but then he got the concussion, missed the rest of the season. So I think that he will enter season as the number 2 with Jeudy. If he can stay on the field, I think he can have a breakout year. But I think Deontay Johnson's a guy they really need to step up and be the third receiver or slot receiver. Other than that, they probably will have to go out and trade for one or acquire one when somebody gets waived. Because other than that, I don't see too many options at wide receiver. The wild card would be Harold Fannin. He's kind of like a wide receiver in a tight end body. Had 117 catches, led the nation in college last year. And I think he can be put out wide, almost like a wide receiver. But I don't think you want to put too much on the plate of a rookie and count on him to immediately, be your top threat outside of Jerry Jeudy. So I think if Jeudy can stay on the field and then get adequate quarterback play, I think he can have another great year, Pro Bowl year.
Before I let you go, Browns moved away from Obo Okunrankwo, cut him. Your thoughts on the move and just how good this defensive line can be with all of the additions and the development of a couple of young guys?
Well, I think they're really counting on Isaiah McGuire and Alex Wright, to step up. 2 guys they drafted, but I think kind of the wild card in here is Joe Tryon Oshinka. He's a free agent they signed. Actually, I think he was like one of the first free agents they signed from Tampa Bay, former first-round draft pick. He was playing as a linebacker in a 3-4 defense in Tampa. They see him as a pure pass rusher, and I think they're really going to use him in that role, and I think that's where that made Okoronkwo expendable. He was earning 6-7 million, not guaranteed. They could save that money. He wasn't living up to the contract when they signed him. I think 3 years, 19 million, and so this was the last year of his deal. So I think Joe Tryon Oshinko is the guy they're really counting on, along with those 2, young guys in Alex Wright coming off injury, and Isaiah McGuire, I think, really is the odds-on favorite to start opposite Myles Garrett.
Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. As always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Fred.
All right, Dave. Thank you. Enjoyed it.
Fred Greetham, make sure you check him out. Orange and Brown Report, always insightful Browns coverage. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns. Chris Easterling, Browns beat reporter for the Akron Beacon Journal, is straight ahead. Stay with us.
You got so much to do, it's got you feeling blue. Put a little play in your day, 'cause it's fun all over the state. So come on, great games wait for you and me. The Ohio Lottery. Put a little play in your day. Put a little play in your day.
Sports4CLE continues. Earlier in the show, we talked a little bit about the Browns' new stadium project. Got the $600 million in the state budget they were looking for approved last night. Dee Haslam on why the new stadium is so important to this region.
For this community to think big, to have vision, to really be excited about what this community can look like. So I think for us, it's not about us. It's about Cleveland and Northeast Ohio and what it means to be citizens from here. I mean, this is a unique place. We have fallen in love with it. We're adopted. I guess we're somewhat adopted here, but love this area, love this region. So it's not about our legacy. It's actually about the legacy of the Cleveland Browns.
Let's welcome in Chris Easterling. He is the Browns beat reporter for the Akron Beacon Journal. Chris, it certainly is thinking much bigger than owners of this franchise have in a while.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that, you know, we've seen the whatever you call it, the mock-ups, the videos. We've seen them for now about a year now, but you know, now that you've kind of gotten to this point, you know, it is sort of amazing that it barring any future legal challenges, that it's going to actually come to fruition. Now, I want to see what it actually looks like, because so many times we've seen what the mock-ups look like, and what the real thing looks like does not necessarily match those. So you know, that's the next step, and that's what we're going to find out in a few years. But yeah, it's certainly a big moment for the franchise and for the region and all of that. Now the question is, again, does it live up to the hype, or is this like the Music Man, or for the Simpsons fans out there, is this like the monorail? Is this something that big promises, but it doesn't quite come to fruition?
All right, let's turn our attention to stuff on the field. Adam Schefter talking about the chances Dillon Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders, one of the Browns' rookies, win that starting quarterback job.
Shedeur Sanders, who's now trying to become the first rookie drafted in the 5th round or later to start a season opener since Randy Hedberg did it in 1977. Remember Randy Hedberg, Dan?
I do not.
Neither do I. But he was the last quarterback drafted in the 5th round or later to start a game. And that tells you that the chances are not in Dillon Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders' favor to start this season. Remember the last 4th round pick or later to start a game?
It's got to be Dak Prescott, right?
Dak Prescott. Yeah. There we go. So Dillon Gabriel has a little bit of a better chance based on draft history. But the fact of the matter is, I don't think we can realistically expect Dillon Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders to open the season as the starting quarterback of the Cleveland Browns. That doesn't mean that at some point this season, the Browns won't get a look at them.
And really, Chris, I never expected one of those two to win the starting job for that very reason. If you thought one of the guys in the draft was going to be your starting quarterback, you take him early in the draft.
Right. I think Adam's saying basically what we've said around here for a while is that, you know, it's going to be Pickett or Flacco that starts against Cincinnati. And I would guess for at least the first month, barring, you know, some sort of injury. And then after that, you know, we see if the season is progressing where they're in somewhat contention, where they're not, you know, they haven't completely fallen off the map, then I think you kind of stick with them, and you owe it to the veterans and everybody in that locker room to kind of go for it. But if the season with that tough start of the schedule goes sideways, then absolutely, I think we're not just going to see one. I think we're going to see both. I think, unless one of them goes in and just absolutely, when they do get their chance to play at some point in a regular season, when they go in there and actually, wow everybody, then maybe you stick with them to really see, okay, do we find the answer? Otherwise, I think you have to otherwise, you try the other one, and you got to have some idea what either of these two rookies can do going into next off season, just because you have those two first round draft picks, and are you going to take that franchise quarterback in the first round with one of those two picks?
Yeah, I would assume, unless one of these guys completely, Russell Wilson, Dak Prescott knocks it out of the park, you go out and you get one of those quarterbacks next year. Take us through this article you wrote. The Browns kind of rebuilding the running game, old scheme, young running backs. Take us through that.
Well, I think it's something that it's been kind of a constant talking point, since the end of the season. Joel Patonio, Jack Conklin talked about the identity of this football team being kind of, at least on offense, being that wide zone run scheme, play action pass, kind of off of the Mike Shanahan, Gary Kubiak, play calling tree, or offensive scheme tree, that you know Kevin's brought with him to Cleveland when he came from Minnesota. So, I think they're just getting back to sort of their roots. The only difference is, when they were running it before, they had Nick Chubb, the number 3 all-time rushing leader in franchise history. Well, Nick's in Houston, and they have two young kids and Quinshon Judkins and Dylan Sampson to go with Jerome Ford and Pierre Strong. That it's sort of, these young guys are now going to have to pick up the baton and kind of carry the old scheme into the next generation or the next iteration of it, because there's no doubt they want to go back to that wide zone scheme. They feel like it fits their line personnel, what they do best blocking wise. And so now I think if they can get it established, I think it also takes the pressure off of whoever the quarterback is, because a good run game, you don't have to throw it 40 times. But so it's going to be interesting to see the implementation of it when they actually get out there and play games. But it's definitely kind of, again, it's just back to the future, so to speak, with what they did for early on. They got away from it with Ken Dorsey because they tried to tailor something to Deshaun Watson's strengths, and then that didn't work. And now they're going back to something that has proven itself to be successful with the right personnel in Cleveland.
What are your thoughts about the line? We kind of touched on it. That's an important part of it. You've got 4 guys in Conklin, Batonio, Posich, and Teller, who are getting up there in age. Do you think, obviously, reverting the scheme has to help? How much does it make them like the run game that was, 2-3 years ago?
Well, I think the biggest thing is just the health. If this team can stay, if those 4 guys specifically can stay healthy, and I'd throw DeJuan Jones in there also at left tackle, then I think that's a huge check in the pros, in the positive column for this team going into the season, because if that line, it's what those guys do best. It's proven. This isn't a projection. This is fact. We have seen it happen here in Cleveland. So if they can stay healthy, which is something. The last 2 years, last year they started 8 different offensive line combinations over the course of 17 games. The year before that, they started 7 different combinations. Now, one of those was that regular season finale against Cincinnati, where Kevin rested the starters, but that's still 6 offensive line groupings that were, because of injuries, they had to shuffle the lineup on. So they can just get good health up front on that offensive line. I just think that's huge for what this football team can do. in terms of having overall success on offense because it allows that run game to take hold. It allows your quarterback to get protection and allows the run game to take pressure off of the quarterback when he does, so he doesn't have to throw it all the time.
Chris Easterling, Browns beat reporter for the Akron Beacon Journal, and I can step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll talk some things to ponder not related to the quarterback position with the Browns. Sports4CLE, will be right back. Stay with us.
You got so much to do, it's got you feeling blue. Put a little play in your day, 'cause it's fun all over the state. So come on, great games wait for you and me, the Ohio Lottery. Put a little play in your day, put a little play in your day.
We continue talking Browns with Chris Easterling, Browns beat reporter for the Akron Beacon Journal. Chris, you wrote an article, non-quarterback things to ponder a few weeks away from training camp. And number one, tough talk. And the Browns, are they truly committed to toughness? Take us through that, and what would be some signs that you think they are?
Well, I just want to see the intensity in practice. I think anybody who's been out of training camp the last couple of years would not necessarily call it the most physical of practices, most physical of training camps. Certainly not, you look around and you hear what they do in Latrobe with the Steelers or what Andy Reid's training camps are like with the Chiefs. Those I mean, full scale tackling, full contact drills, all that stuff. You don't really see that. And, it's, I don't want to say country club like, but it has been very lacking in some, in some of the real football type things that you would, expect, some of the full contact stuff. So I'm just curious. I'm not saying you have to wail on them. It has to be 2.5 hours of just wailing on each other, but just, just up the intensity a little bit so that you show that you're trying to get yourself physically and mentally ready for to play a physical sport, for real. And once the regular season comes around, and then, again, it's handling some of that stuff. If you're hurt, you're hurt. And this isn't about injuries because I nobody outside of the, criticizing a player for an injury. We saw it in the NBA playoffs with Tyrese Halliburton. It's a fool's errand to try to do that because you don't have all the information. But just seeing how they handle some of the adversity, whatever adversity it might be, just because that's something that Joe Patonio said they didn't do last year, and that's part of why the season spiraled to 3-14. So can they just sort of handle when they, a bad series, a bad whatever? How do they handle that? And that's another thing. I don't know how much you're going to look at for it in training camp, but once you get in the season, is how do they handle if things don't go their way? Do they, they sort of sulk and mope or throw their helmets, whatever, or they sort of get back out there and, get after it even harder the next time.
Yeah, when they got off to the start they did last year, that's when, and they had all those soft tissue injuries. Those are the two things that make me question, are you doing everything you need to do to get these guys' bodies ready to get beat on in the regular season? Because you're going from very limited, we're going to protect, to, somebody on the other side is trying to knock my rear end to the ground and take my head off, 50, 60 times a game. Point two on your thing was more help on the way for the Browns wide receiving core. What are your thoughts there?
Well, I mean, I'm wondering if that's actually going to happen before the training camp actually begins, or that's something maybe it's addressed as training camp goes on, or even like we saw when they acquired Dustin Hopkins and Pierre Strong a couple of years ago, right after the final preseason game. Is this something that you sort of wait and you see how cuts are going at elsewhere, and who might shake free and be available at the end of training camp? But you have Jerry Jeudy, who's coming off of his best season of his career. You have Seth Tillman, who was showing signs of breaking out a little bit, or at least becoming a very viable NFL wide receiver before the concussion last year into his season. You have this wild card in Deontay Johnson, who at his peak is Pro Bowl caliber, but is coming off of a season where he basically made himself toxic for any team other than the Cleveland Browns to even so much as offer him a non-guaranteed vet minimum contract. So, and then you have a bunch of guys like David Bell, Michael Woods, Jamari Thrash, a bunch of rookies, that undrafted rookies that you've got to find some depth in that room, some consistent guys that you can count on beyond Jerry Jeudy, so that teams just can't load up and take Jerry Jeudy away. Now, part of it will be a healthy David Njoku probably helps a little bit with that as well. But, somebody in that room besides Jerry Jeudy has to step up and be a true, legitimate, dangerous NFL wide receiving threat.
So the third part that you had is would the Browns make a deal to help fill a void in their positional gaps? Do you think? I get the sense they're not looking that way. You're closer to it than I am, admittedly. What sense do you get with that?
I don't, but that's another thing that I just wonder, when this quarterback situation, once it plays out and they sort of get, again, I wonder if that's something that might happen that week between that Rams preseason finale and the week you start preparing for the season opener, the week of the season opener, that where you see maybe something, if they say, hey, we're just not satisfied here, but we do have one of these cornerbacks, whether it's Greg Newsome, Martin Emerson, that maybe we could flip with a pick to get something, or whoever, Kenny Pickett or Joe Flacco, if whoever doesn't win the quarterback job or whatever. That's more I don't think it happens right now, at least in terms of anything pre-season opener type deals. But I mean, it's something just sort of to watch as the training camp goes along, and as maybe some holes really show themselves by what guys are able or unable to do in camp.
So first round pick Mason Graham. Take a look at this. He is working out with Javon Gopi, and he's known for helping defensive linemen increase their sack totals. Helped Jared Verse and Nick Benito leading into their rookie years. They call him the sack sensei, and you get an idea of Mason Graham, kind of the hand fighting, and it's kind of interesting, Chris. It's even more important for Mason Graham because he played in that read and react system in Michigan, and the Browns want him to get after it. So it's kind of an interesting way to spend some time getting ready for training camp.
It's funny. You look at what he's doing in these drills. It's a lot of what both Andrew Berry, Kevin Stefanski, Jacques Cesare, the line coach, when they talked about the strengths of Mason Graham, they liked his hand. He liked the way he uses his hands. They liked his power. It's just working on some of those strengths because, like you said, they don't really have a lot of snaps of him playing in a true attacking scheme, because that's not what he did at Michigan. Whether it was Jesse Minter or last year with Wink Martindale, that wasn't what their defense did. So you are projecting a bit with him, but what made him the number one defensive tackle in a lot of people's minds going into the draft was just some of those things you saw him working on in that clip. So I'm fascinated. He is definitely one of the players I am absolutely fascinated to see what they look like once you get into camp and can really start playing, quote unquote football, instead of just helmets and shorts, but actually put the pads on and see him go one-on-one, working in various drills against blockers in joint practices, that sort of thing, because he's an intriguing prospect that if they hit, you hear a lot of people say, you turn the tape on and you just see it with him, and I think that's what the Browns, they need to see it with him in what this will be a new scheme for him.
Chris Easterling, Browns beat reporter for the Akron Beacon Journal. As always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Chris.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Chris Easterling, make sure you check him out. He is the Browns beat reporter for the Akron Beacon Journal. Always great stuff. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.